see the hall is already full, even outside and inside. So kwa nyinyi marafiki wangu wote ambao mmefika hapa from all corners of Kenya, I want to appreciate you. Asanteni sana. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the leaders who have joined us. Today, we wanted this day to be a day of the message that we have for Kenyans. And therefore, we invited a few leaders. And I am glad that all the leaders that we invited are here. I want to appreciate my senior and a leader we all know, Governor James Orengo. Thank you very much. I want to appreciate my brother, the Member of Parliament for Udai, Mheshimiwa Dan Mashako. Na pia ningetaka nitambue senior counsel ambaye ni Senator wa Nyamira Okongo Omogeni. Asante sana. They'll be getting a chance later as we proceed. I have been carrying a heavy burden, and I have to say this to my compatriots, the people of Kenya, because I believe, even as I make a political decision, these are the kind of decisions we have made previously. And there are some lessons we have gained out of that. And therefore, my heart has been burdened and have been burdened for many months, because I have been thinking and praying that in whatever direction I take, politically speaking, that the people of Kenya must be the great consideration that I have. I have participated before in national campaigns, as you all know, na nikazunguka Kenya mzima. And through the lessons of campaigns and the lessons during governance, I have come to appreciate that it's actually easier to campaign than to govern. And I say so because as we participated in the campaigns last year, and I'm saying this in good faith, I realized even after we won that the real battle was not in the campaigns. The real battle was in the deliverables that Kenyans expected. And I have to say, at some point I was disappointed. And I'm saying this again in good faith, because we had a captain, and I always think that as you head forward as a leader, you must be crystal clear on where you are taking the people. Unfortunately, after we won, I want to be honest with Kenyans that we engaged in a lot of trial and error, and especially in the beginning years. And that is the reason I have been having a burden, that whatever I do in terms of politics, it has to be based on the right governance after the win, even as we head towards the winning. And the decision we are making today, and I'm communicating to Kenyans today, is on how we proceed forward. But as you all know, the choice on the table this evening, or the decision we are making, it is not about where we were and where we should be. Where we were, we left. It is a matter of the decision we'll be making at the end of this press conference and briefing is what will be our engagement. Where are the people of Kenya as we make this decision? Not just today, in terms of communication as we go around the country, but also past August next year. That to me is a more important and weighty matter. And as I have said as I was starting, it is a burden I've been carrying, because as we engage as leaders, as we engage this against the other, the Kenyan people are literally fighting for survival. And therefore, in my opinion, as we head forward, what I'll be communicating later, we must be crystal clear on the kind of things that we want to deliver to our republic, and especially the children of God who are the people of Kenya. As leaders, we have that obligation, and it has to be at the center of what we are doing. And as I get there, I'll give a few points in terms of the kind of things I think must form our campaigns and must form our deliverables as a team on this side of opposition. But I'll also be sharing how to deliver them. I have taken a lot of time. As I've been silent, wakati nimekuwa nimenyamaza, ni vizuri niseme, nimekuwa nikiangalia nchi yetu ya Kenya in all the sectors, and have actually single-handedly, with a very small team, come up with almost a full booklet. It's not a manifesto. We have heard this word many times. I have had an opportunity to be at a place I'm serving Kenya, where I had the bird's eye of Kenya across all the sectors. So I have taken time to scroll through every sector. What is it that we can do to the people of Kenya? What is it that we can do in every sector? So that after next year, August, Kenya becomes a much better country than even where President Mwai Kibaki left. And as I say this, allow me to say for those who are watching us for the first time and hearing maybe about Kiharu for the first time. Kiharu constituency, which I represent, is a very vast constituency. In fact, our two neighbors are smaller than Kiharu in all respects. Land mass, number of voters, land mass. Number of voters, land mass, number of schools, across all respects. And I am very glad to stand here as Member of Parliament for Kiharu, serving my second term, because we have been able to transform many things across the education sector. And I will name just two. Being a vast rural constituency, we have many schools, public primary schools. We have actually around 120 public primary schools in Kiharu. And I want to confirm here to the people of Kenya that all our public primary schools, the one we got, the ones we have built, children in a rural constituency like Kiharu, they go to school where all classrooms are tiled. Na sio tiles peke yake, ni kutengeneza shule inakuwa shule mzuri, over and above building the new ones that we have done. There is also another program we have done of landscaping our schools. We have currently done capital to 75 schools across Kiharu. In fact, many times people do weddings in Kiharu, wanaitaka kupigiwa picha, photo session, in our public primary schools. Jambo la pili ningetaka nitaje, tuko na shule 65, shule za secondary, day secondary schools. And we have around 12,000 learners in those schools. We have a program we run called Kiharu Masomo Bora. And I want to confirm to Kenyans that fees across Kiharu in all our public day schools, fees is only 500 shillings per term. And learners eat in school, and they actually eat chapati every last Friday of the month. Ya sio ile ya machini, hii ni chapati kabisa. And that is my entry point. Because allow me, my friends and Kenyans, because later I'll be giving crystal clear where I'll start politically and my participation. The few points I want to give is about what is the foundation of me doing what I'll be doing. What are my expectations insofar as the people of Kenya are concerned? And that is why that issue of education is my entry point. I believe as I stand here today, as we will hold hands with all Kenyans to deliver Kenya next year in August, we have done it in Kiharu to show that education can actually be reformed without necessarily adding taxes to Kenyans. By just reconfiguring the resources that we have And in the education sector, these are my expectations, together with the people on the opposition side, whom will be seeking an opportunity to deliver Kenya next year. On the education sector, and I'll be giving just a summary. We start from ECD. I know it's a devout function. The points I'll be giving, some may require changes in law. Others may require just an executive direction. Others just funding. So I'll give them knowing that some may actually require changes in our laws. ECD, as it is in Kenya, we have to change it from next year. We have to change it and have our ECD trainers and teachers either at a TSC or a TSC equivalent. I believe this is possible so that we have a body that is looking at the welfare of all ECD teachers, from hiring to transfers to remuneration, so that even as they seek their welfare, they can canvass that in the national arena. The second thing is on secondary schools. We have demonstrated it is doable. I want to confirm to Kenyans, the team I belong into, and the people we are going to hold hands with, we must, from January of 2028, deliver free basic education, and that is great. And we start that with our senior secondary schools. Of the 3.5 million Kenyans and learners in our senior secondary schools, we only require an additional 35 billion Kenya shillings. My proposal is as follows: that NGCDF will contribute 10 billion shillings into that kitty. The equitable share of our counties, because they also give bursaries, they also contribute 10 billion Kenya shillings. And that issue is that the national government to give in 15 billion Kenya shillings. 35 billion Kenya shillings is enough to give all school-going learners in our senior secondary schools free education, including meals. The other thing, as we look into that, is that we also must diversify the menus in our schools, so that our schools become also centers of markets of our produce in our villages. Kama unatoka pahali Muthokoi iko, kama unatoka pahali kwa Githeri, pahali kwa Matoke, it is important that we incorporate even those kind of menus into our schools, so that even farmers in our villages can find that as a local marketplace to sell their produce. Na wale wanatutazama wazazi wetu, mimi nasema ya kwamba nimeangazia na nimechukua Kenya mzima na nikaangalia fedha tuko nazo, na zile mbinu napeana leo ni vitu tunaweza fanya bila kuongeza kodi kwa Wakenya. Na ndio nimesema next year lazima tukikomboa Kenya, in the January of 2028, lazima Kenya ipee watoto wa Kenya masomo bila malipo, tukianza na senior secondary schools, wasome bila malipo yoyote na wakuwe wanakula shule. Na nimefanya hiyo mahesabu na najua kwenye pesa itatoka. In our universities, we have a challenge. Mimi nimepata fursa, nimeitwa na university students, na nimeweza kuona ya kwamba the demographics are changing. Wale wanasoma kama sisi kutoka familia hazijiwezi, nimeona ni gumu sana, kwa sababu nimeitwa na university students engineering, nimeenda kwa madaktari, na nikaona iko shida kubwa sana ya watu kutoka day schools, wanafunzi kutoka familia zile ziko chini sana kupata nafasi ya kufanya kozi kama hizo. Pia hapo kuna jambo tumefanya, ni vile tunapeana summary. The second thing, and I want to finish first with social response, because there are two things that are important, which are social investments. One is education, the other one is health. education adds value to a human being, and health services labor, and the provider of labor is a human being. On the side of health, mambo ni mawili nimeona yale changamoto kubwa. Changamoto ya kwanza ni sisi viongozi tumeingilia mfumo ya healthcare. Unapata kama system ambayo ina manage healthcare ya Wakenya wenyewe ni wenye tu wanaongoza nchi. Jambo ya kwanza, system kama hiyo ya IT, it must be owned by the government of Kenya. Jambo la pili, na hiyo ni changamoto kubwa, and I said I'll be mixing language, is the issue of funding. I have looked at the amount of money we collect in our healthcare system, in whatever name you call it, the previous one of NHIF and the current one. And whatever we say, whatever we promise, the point of the matter is that there is a funding gap. And my proposal is as follows, that starting the year 2028, the amount of money Kenyans are contributing into NSSF, ili ya pensions, ya retirement, we have that percentage. We reduce it by 50%. That extra 50% reduction goes into healthcare, and that will add into our healthcare system an extra 40 billion shillings, ambayo itapea wa Kenya afya mwafaka na yenye hawatakuwa wanarudi kwa mfuko kulipa. Many families have been ravaged by bills. As much as we are talking as leaders, we must provide practical solutions, and that is my practical solution. Within the same kitty of around 40 billion additional, it is enough money to take care adequately of all emergencies that meet Kenyan families, and also the chronic illnesses that are reducing many families into beggars. Hiyo pesa inaweza kufanya hiyo kazi. Na jambo lingine katika healthcare, the same money is enough to upgrade enough institutions here in Kenya, healthcare institutions, so that we can bring India here into Kenya instead of Kenyans going to India. And we'll be transforming these institutions so that they serve Kenyans in the region also. The last thing I want to give in terms of healthcare, I have interacted with many doctors, and I have interacted with many healthcare professionals. Dear Kenyans, we must bite the bullet. It is clear that Kenya is ripe. Again, I give an example for an equivalent of TSC. Even in healthcare, Kenya must have the Kenya Doctors and Healthcare Workers Commission that will be managing the affairs of our doctors and healthcare workers. And I am saying this knowing that it is a devolved function, but laws are made for the man, not man for the law. You can imagine now that a doctor in Nyamira, if they get married in Kwale, they have to quit their job in Nyamira and seek a fresh job at the other place. If we have a national platform to manage our healthcare workers, this will be a good opportunity, first of all, to harmonize. Number two, also, to ease also their welfare in terms of transfers. And so that also, we have a united front when it comes to staffing of our healthcare facilities. The other issue I want to give, which have really troubled my mind, is the issue of jobs. The other day, I got a committee from one of the churches in my office. And they were coming to invite me for a function, a church function. There were two ladies in that committee. And just during the introduction, one lady even cried, even before they told me what the agenda of the meeting, why they had come to my office. Because the lady has a son who is a doctor, who is doing vibarua. The other lady in the same meeting has a pharmacist, also unemployed. Kenyan watching us tonight, all families, all, most of them are having a challenge of people who have gone to school, they are willing and able, but our country cannot provide an opportunity for them to work. Dear leaders and Kenyans, this has to change. And I'll give a few areas. I'll just give a few. One is that all the economies of the world that we study, from Singapore that we all hear about, I know you are almost laughing, to South Korea, to China, and all these countries, the basis of growth which creates a synergetic movement in the economy is manufacturing. We have to deliberately grow our manufacturing sector to secure jobs for the young people of Kenya. And in this respect, you cannot talk about manufacturing without talking about the cost of power. And that is why, in terms of manufacturing, the proposals I have come with are domiciled, number one, around getting power adequate in Kenya, but also cheap. One is that we have to totally liberalize power sector. And the kind of lip service you are hearing from government is not enough. Liberalization has to happen. If an industry can produce their power to use, and they have access to sell, they must be at liberty to sell it to the next factory, so that we have as many producers of energy as possible, because abundance brings forth lower prices. The second thing, in terms of bringing the cost of power down in Kenya, we have an institution called KenGen, majority owned by the people of Kenya through the government. The current valuation of KenGen is around 75 billion Kenya shillings. Yet it is a company that produces roughly 2,000 megawatts of power. An equivalent of KenGen in other economies is valued more than 450 billion Kenya shillings. Just to cite like two, Transport Power in Nigeria, Geregu Power in Nigeria. Currently there is a transaction ongoing in Philippines, a country called EDC, producing less than KenGen, yet the valuation is $5 billion US. What am I proposing? That immediately, and I'm talking about early 2028, we must leverage the $500 billion assets of KenGen. The government must advertise internationally and sell 35% of KenGen into a partner that knows much more about power, so that we fetch close to 150 billion Kenya shillings, and that money will go directly into producing more energy. The more we produce, the cheaper it will become. On manufacturing, the issue again of manufacturing policy, I am just trying to be brief. I have done a lot of research on the things I'm talking about, so I'm just giving top lines. Vitu tu zile summary. Manufacturing policy. Nimeweza kuangalia nchi kama South Korea iliweza kukua namna gani, nchi kama China from 1978, na nikaona ya kwamba nchi huwa haiachiliwi tu ijipeleke. Lazima serikali inaangazia ni wapi tunataka nchi iendelee, na katika hiyo manufacturing huwa inaongozwa na kitu inaitwa manufacturing policy, and we've been able to check the kind of items that Kenya can tap into so that we can grow our manufacturing sector at a much faster pace than we are doing now. The other issue, you allow me just to go top line and summary, around jobs. All these points now I am giving are all about jobs. The other second point around jobs is hospitality and tourism. Currently, Kenya last year had maybe around 2.7 million international visitors. A country of 58 million Kenyans, abundantly blessed, well-positioned, I have looked at cases, for example, Morocco, a much smaller country than Kenya in terms of population. Even in terms of endowments, Kenya is much better. Morocco had 19 million visitors last year. Albania, a country with maybe a tenth of our population, they had 12 million visitors last year. Clearly there is something we can do so that we grow our tourism sector, diversifying what we offer, marketing Kenya better, and my target is that as a country we should be able to attract 10 million international visitors. What does that do? For every 3 million visitors, we create 1 million jobs. If we have 10 million visitors, we are talking about 3 million direct jobs. And every one direct job in hospitality and tourism creates 3 more jobs indirectly through agriculture, through transport, and the rest. It is clear that we can do more, attract more visitors into Kenya, and clearly create more than 3 million direct jobs for the great youth of Kenya who are watching us tonight. The other issue I want to highlight in terms of jobs again. All this I'm giving is about jobs because I've realized there is no way you can say you are growing an economy when many Kenyans qualified are idle. So allow me to highlight the issue of finance industry. Kenya has many banks, over 40. Whether big or small, they all make money. How then do we give an advantage to others that is in our country? My proposal is this way. Kenya must covertly frustrate the takeover of the Kenyan banks by international institutions. Covertly. Because this is a sector that clearly makes money. How do you give out a sector that makes money so easily? The second thing is that we must deliberately create an atmosphere where we can have big banks, Kenyan banks, competing regionally and continentally. Through our regulator, it is important that Kenya creates big behemoths, banks in Kenya that can compete continentally with banks like Standard Bank, like banks like Netbank. And this, I have done what should be done by the regulator, so that even as we grow competition in our finance industry, we also have big enough institutions that can compete across the continent, because this fetches Kenya money from other markets. Tuko pamoja? Allow me so that I am sequential, to highlight just briefly about agriculture. Agriculture currently is dominant in our economy when it comes to jobs. Many Kenyans in rural areas, precisely 70%, are employed in the agricultural sector, but the productivity is too low. Even with the fertilizer subsidy, Kenya is facing an imminent maize food shortage in the next 3 months. I can assure you, Kenya can only import maize to sustain ourselves in the next 3 months. Therefore, this shows whereas some policies can be enhanced and become better, we also need additional policies around agriculture. And just to give a few, when it comes to food crops like maize, beyond fertilizer, we need also to participate by availing to our farmers cheaper or even much more subsidized certified seed of maize. Because there is the issue of production, but there is also the issue of productivity. Hata ukipea fertilizer mbegu ambayo ni sio mzuri sana, fertilizer can only do so much. So that is one of the areas to grow productivity and production. But holistically, when it comes to cash crops like tea and coffee, na najua kuna wakulima wengi wanatutazama hapa leo, wako katika eneo mingi za Kenya. Kenya haifanyi enough kwa kusaidia wakulima wetu kuzalisha vizuri coffee and tea, na pia kwa wao kupata mapato mwafaka. Na kwa hayo, beyond the fertilizer which we must avail to Kenyans, we must also do much more. Kenyans are also asking for more affordable pesticides and other inputs within agriculture. The second thing is about marketing. Yes, we grow this tea and coffee, but we can look at where we can fetch better prices, what kind of products. We must deliberately, as a country, embrace speciality, so that as we grow our tea, na tukikuza kahawa yetu, tunakuza ile iko na bei ya juu sana katika bei za kidunia na soko ya duniani. And agriculture has a potential to raise productivity to the millions of farmers who are engaged in it. Muniruhusu niende nikimaliza. Na nikiongea kwa sauti munisamehe, hii ni kitu ambayo imeumiza roho yangu sana. Because I think our country can do more, but there are some chokes and there are some bottlenecks that we have to deal with. Utaniruhusu niende kwa vitu zingine, sio sasa za kazi. Na so that I'm sequential. Hizi vitu nimezifanya mwenyewe, lakini ningetaka naangalia ndio tusiache ile muhimu. Ukiangalia Kenya, na mimi nimepata nafasi na tazama na angalia kwa undani. Ile shida inakuba Kenya kwa sasa ya juu zaidi ni integrity of leaders, corruption and governance. Dear Kenyans, kama kuna kitu lazima tufanye kwa dharura, ni kwamba we can no longer continue to stomach leaders who get elected and their ambition is to get richer than the leaders they replaced. Na nimeweza kufikiria sana, na mimi natoa mawazo yangu ya kwamba kiongozi akichaguliwa Kenya katika nyadhifa ya juu, immediately anakuwa ndiye mwanabiashara mashuhuri sana Kenya katika sekta zote. And you know, dear Kenyans, this issue I want to call patronage. We are all paying the price of it. In the year 2022, we use a lot of cement in Keharo because of construction that we do there. Cement, a bag of cement was around 550 shillings. Now it is over 50% higher than that for the same. But Kenyans also need to know, for every cement you buy, whatever the brand, 90% of the chance is that money is going into the pocket of one Kenyan. And I do not want to personalize this address, but I have thought about it keenly. Na hii ni jambo ambayo kama wa Kenya tutajiuliza. Kenya iko na tradition ya kwamba ukitoka kama kiongozi unaheshimiwa ukitoka ofisini. But the question we must ask ourselves as Kenyans, it is at what cost are we going to continue with this tradition? Even when it is glaring that people abuse power, must we continue to say as Kenyans that we want to continue those who leave power simply because they have gone, and yet it is glaring they abused power to make huge amounts of money? Hiyo ni jambo nataka tujiulize kama Wakenya. Na kama kuna jambo ambayo inazuia nchi yetu kuenda mbele, ni viongozi ambao ni walafi, wanajipenda na wananyakua mali ya umma. Kenya must criminalize proxy investments. Kwa sababu viongozi wengi wanaandikisha yule wakitaka kuown vitu. We must criminalize proxy investments. Then the second thing, anyone seeking power, and especially in the presidency, you have to come in the open. You list all your assets. And by the time you leave power, we also have to review your assets. And then Kenya has to have a cap that there should never be assets transferred to those other people or to those leaders 25 years after they leave power. Hii ingine nitakipia kiasi, mambo ya madeni. Kenya kwenye iko sasa, Wakenya wenzangu, kama kuna jambo ambayo inahujumu uchumi wetu ni mambo ya madeni. Kwa sababu sasa Kenya iko na deni ya shilingi 13 trillion shillings. Tunakopa shilingi bilioni 4 kila siku. Na Mkenya, every Kenyan, including the one who was born today, is born with a debt of 228,000 shillings. Na tunaendelea kukopa kwa kasi than before. There are many things I'm proposing, including holistically growing our economy. But the silver bullet that we have as a country to come out of this issue of debt, dear Kenyans, is oil and minerals. Kwa sababu Mungu amebariki nchi yetu. Na tuko na mafuta Turkana. Tuko na minerals. And the more the reason, dear Kenyans, we must guard these assets viciously. Na ndio mimi natoa onyo kwa viongozi wetu. Wale mnahusika na mambo ya mafuta Turkana, lazima mkuwe na huruma na Wakenya. Mambo ya mafuta ya Turkana inafaa isaidie kaunti ya Turkana na Kenya mzima, na itusaidie pia maneno hii ya madeni kubwa. Jambo ingine ya pili ambayo ni muhimu sana katika hiyo mambo ya madini, mambo ya kule Kwale, Mlima Hills, kuna watu pia wanamezea mate. And I want to tell them, because I know they are watching, we are not going to allow you to take over Mlima Hills for your own personal benefit. Because that is the silver bullet we have economically, oil and minerals, to deal with the issue of debt. Wacha niseme jambo ya equality. Sisi wote kutoshana kama Wakenya. Na mimi my proposal is as follows. That from 2028 January, inua jamii ile tunapea wazazi wetu. Na mniruhusu nikisema figa zingine ziko chini kiasi. Mimi nimejaribu kuangazia vitu Kenya inaweza fanya kwa sasa bila kuongeza ushuru. Hii 2,000 shillings tunapea wazazi wetu, we must increase it in January of 2028 into 3,000 shillings and increase another 1,000 shillings after 3 years, because the bill of every 1,000 shillings is 12 billion Kenya shillings per year. The other thing ni maneno ya mahakama. Naanza kuongea haraka ndio tuite viongozi wengine watusalimie. Ndio tuweze kupeleka mambo ya mahakama ikuwe so that we give justice to Kenyans across the board vizuri. My proposal is that we double the capacity of our judiciary in the next 5 years, but also number 2, tuweke kwa sheria that our judiciary must receive 1.5% at the very least, 1.5% of our national revenue per year. Hiyo jambo ingine nikienda kumaliza, mimi na propose hii mambo yote tuko na system kama ya e-citizen, ile ya SHA, ile ingine ya NTSA. Kenya to create a company called KDSS. This company to own all these entities. Then it gets listed in the